The examination hall was completely white. Everything glowed with a soft blue light that came from the walls themselves. Chiho stood in the center of the room, looking around at the strange beings who would decide her future. She was the first human to take this test. The first human to even stand in this room. She was 24 years old, but she felt much younger right now. Back on Earth, she had been a teacher. She taught people how to survive in the wilderness. She knew how to track animals, how to find food, how to stay alive when everything went wrong. But this was different. This was not Earth. This was the Galactic Academy, and these were not humans watching her. Proctor Velthar stood at the front of the panel of judges. He was tall and covered in shiny plates like an insect. His body was dark green and reflected the light. He had many eyes that looked at her all at once. When he spoke, his mouth moved strangely, and a machine translated his words into sounds she could understand. "You are candidate Jiho, representing the species called humans," he said. His voice was flat and cold. "You will now undergo the hunter simulation. This test has been given for 47 cycles. It measures your ability to think, to plan, and to act with proper control. Do you understand?" Jiho nodded. "Yes, I understand." Above the examination hall, in a room with windows that looked down on everything, Ambassador Soman watched. She was older than Jiho, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent 10 years talking to the aliens, convincing them to let humans join their galactic society. 10 years of careful words and patient waiting. Now everything depended on this young woman below. Soman's hands were shaking. She held them together tightly so no one would see. Back in the examination hall, another being moved forward. This one was made of crystal. Light passed through its body and created rainbow patterns on the floor. It had no mouth, but somehow it could speak. The words seemed to come from inside Jiho's head. "I am Observer Keth," the crystal being said. "I will watch your actions and judge your choices. Every species approaches this test differently. We are curious to see the human way." A third examiner sat to the side. This one looked like a large lizard that walked on 2 legs. She had red scales and sharp teeth. Her name was Security Chief Nara, and she did not look friendly. "The simulation is simple," Velthar continued. "You will enter a holographic environment. Inside there is a creature called a Thornback Alpha. It is one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. Your task is to neutralize the threat. You will have standard equipment. You will have 6 hours. If you fail the examination. If you succeed, we will evaluate how you succeeded." He paused, then added, "Most candidates kill the creature quickly and cleanly. This shows control and efficiency. This is what we expect from civilized beings." Jiho listened carefully. She noticed that Velthar used the word kill very specifically. She noticed that he said most candidates did this. She noticed that he said neutralize the threat, but then explained it as killing. These were important details. Before she came here, Jiho had spent months studying with her younger brother Taiyang. He was a scientist who studied alien life forms. Together, they had reviewed every piece of information Earth had about the different species in the galaxy. They had studied how these species hunted, how they fought, how they thought about danger. Taiyang had told her something important. "They will expect you to be like them," he had said. "But you are human. Remember what that means." Now, standing in this white room full of aliens, Jiho raised her hand. Velthar stopped talking. His many eyes focused on her. "Yes, candidate?" "I have a question," Jiho said. Her voice was calm and polite. "You said I need to neutralize the threat. You said most candidates kill the creature, but I want to be clear about the requirements." She paused, then asked, "Do you want it alive?" The room became completely silent. Velthar's translator made a small buzzing sound as if it was confused. Observer Keth's crystal body flashed with bright light, then went dim. Security Chief Nara leaned forward, her red eyes wide. Above them, Ambassador Soman closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She did not know if she wanted to laugh or cry. "Please repeat your question," Velthar said slowly. "Do you want the Thornback Alpha alive?" Jiho asked again. "Or is it acceptable to capture it without killing it? You used the word neutralize, which could mean many things. I want to understand what result you actually need." The examiners looked at each other. In 47 cycles of giving this test, no one had ever asked this question. The test was always the same. Enter the simulation, find the predator, kill the predator. Demonstrate skill and control. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked. But this human was asking if there was another way. Security Chief Nara spoke up. The Thornback Alpha is extremely dangerous. It has killed trained warriors. It is designed to test your combat abilities. How would you even capture such a creature? I don't know yet, Jiho answered honestly. But if capture is allowed, I would like to try. If it is not allowed, I will follow the standard procedure. I just want to know the rules clearly. Observer Keth's voice filled the room again. This is interesting. The human asks about options we never considered. The rules say neutralize the threat. They do not specifically require death. They only require that the threat is stopped. But it is impossible, Nara argued. No one can capture a Thornback Alpha alive. It is too strong, too fast, too aggressive. She will be killed. The simulation has safety protocols, Keth replied. She cannot actually die. And if she wishes to attempt something difficult, should we stop her? Belthar was quiet for a long moment. His mandibles clicked together as he thought. Finally, he spoke. Candidate Jiho, the objective is neutralization of the threat. If you can achieve this through capture instead of killing, that is acceptable. However, you must succeed. If the creature remains dangerous, if it is not fully neutralized, you will fail. Do you understand? I understand, Jiho said, then prepare yourself. The simulation begins in 5 minutes. As Jiho walked toward the simulation chamber, she could hear the examiners talking among themselves. They spoke in their own languages, but the tone was clear. They thought she was foolish. They thought she would fail. Above, Ambassador Soman watched Jiho disappear into the chamber. She thought about all the years of careful diplomacy, all the effort to make humans seem peaceful and civilized, how this young woman was about to do something that no alien had ever attempted. Soman hoped Jiho knew what she was doing. She hoped that whatever happened next would not destroy everything they had worked for. But deep down, she also felt something else. Pride. Because Jiho had not just accepted their test. She had questioned it. She had found a possibility they never even imagined. That was very human indeed. The world appeared around Jiho in an instant. One moment she was in the white examination chamber, and the next she was standing in a forest. But this was not a forest from Earth. The trees were tall and twisted, with purple leaves that seemed to glow faintly. The air was thick and warm, and it smelled like metal and flowers mixed together. She looked down and saw the equipment that had been provided. There was a plasma rifle, sleek and black, with a digital display showing it was fully charged. There was a scanner device that would help her track the creature. There was protective armor, light but strong, and there was a small pack with basic survival supplies. In the observation room, the examiners watched her on multiple screens. They could see her body temperature, her heart rate, her exact location. They could see everything she did. On another screen, a red dot showed the location of the Thornback Alpha. It was 2 kilometers away, moving slowly through the forest. She should begin tracking immediately, Security Chief Nara said. Every moment wasted gives the creature time to position itself. But Jiho did not pick up the scanner. She did not pick up the rifle. Instead, she knelt down and looked at the plants around her. She touched the soil. She smelled the air. She was studying the environment itself. After several minutes, she began to move through the forest. But she was not moving toward the creature. She was moving in a wide circle, examining different plants, looking at the way water flowed in a small stream, testing the strength of vines that hung from the trees. What is she doing? Belthar asked. This is inefficient. She is not even attempting to locate the target. Observer Keth's crystal form pulsed with soft light. She is learning. She is understanding the space before she acts. This is unusual. Jiho found a plant with thick, waxy leaves. She crushed one leaf and smelled it. The scent was very strong, almost overwhelming. She nodded to herself and began collecting these leaves, putting them carefully in her pack. Then she found a different plant with tough, flexible stems. She tested their strength by pulling on them. They did not break. She began gathering these too. An hour passed. Jiho had not once looked at the scanner. She had not once moved toward the creature. Instead, she was building something. She wove the plant stems together, creating long ropes. She dug a small pit in the ground and covered it with thin branches and leaves. She arranged rocks in specific patterns. She is making traps, Nara observed. But this is primitive. Why not use the technology we provided? Perhaps the technology would be noticed by the creature, Keth suggested. These natural materials blend with the environment. They are harder to detect. Ambassador Soman watched from above, her heart beating fast. She recognized what Jiho was doing. This was the human way of hunting. Not with superior weapons or strength, but with intelligence and preparation. Ancient humans had hunted this way for thousands of years. Jiho created several different types of traps, placing them in a careful pattern through the forest. Net snares that would drop from trees, pits covered with false ground, triggers made from balanced rocks. Each trap was different. Each one was placed with thought. Finally, after 2 hours of preparation, Jiho picked up the scanner. She looked at it briefly, saw where the creature was, then put it back down. Now she knew the Thornback's location, but she did not approach it directly. Instead, she moved to a position where the wind would carry her scent toward the creature. She is drawing it to her, Velthar said, surprised. She is using herself as bait. The Thornback Alpha appeared on the video screens. It was massive, even larger than the examiners had described. 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 powerful legs and a thick tail covered in sharp bone spikes. Its skin was like armor, dark gray and rough. Its mouth had rows of teeth designed for tearing meat. Its eyes were yellow and intelligent. The creature caught Jiho's scent. Its head lifted and it began to move toward her location. It moved carefully like a predator that had learned to be cautious. This simulation was designed to be realistic. The Thornback had artificial intelligence that let it learn and adapt. Jiho climbed into a tree and waited. She could see the creature now, moving through the forest below. She watched it carefully, not with fear, but with focus. She was studying how it moved, how it searched, what patterns it followed. She whispered notes to herself, so quiet that only her communication device picked them up. The examiners could hear her observations. Favors left side when turning. Pauses every 20 meters to scan. Hearing is excellent but relies heavily on movement. Does not look up often. She is analyzing it, Keth said, sounding almost pleased. Not just hunting it. Understanding it. The Thornback approached the first trap. It was a net snare positioned above a path, but the creature was smart. It saw the disturbed ground where Jiho had worked. It smelled something wrong. It avoided the trap carefully, except this was exactly what Jiho expected. When the Thornback moved to avoid the obvious trap, it stepped directly on a pressure trigger hidden in the grass. A net fell from a different tree, one the creature had not noticed. The net was coated with the crushed leaves Jiho had collected earlier. The creature roared. The net was strong, but not strong enough to hold it for long. The Thornback began tearing through the ropes with its claws, but the leaves, the ones with the overwhelming scent, were all over its body now. The smell was so strong that it confused the creature's senses. It shook its head, disoriented. Jiho used those precious seconds to move. She swung down from the tree and ran, not away from the creature, but in a specific direction. She was leading it toward the next trap. The Thornback broke free from the net and charged after her. It was fast, much faster than a human. But Jiho was not trying to outrun it. She was trying to guide it. She ran through a narrow space between 2 large rocks. The creature followed, but its large body barely fit. On the other side, Jiho had placed sharp stones pointing upward, hidden in shallow water. The Thornback's feet hit the stones and it roared in pain and anger. She is hurting it, Velthar realized. Each trap is not meant to capture the creature. Each trap is meant to move it toward a specific location. The examiners watched as Jiho led the Thornback through her carefully planned route. Every obstacle, every trap, every obstacle served a purpose. She was using the entire forest as one large trap. But then something changed. The Thornback stopped chasing her. It stood still, breathing heavily, its yellow eyes watching her. The artificial intelligence was learning. It recognized that it was being manipulated. It would not follow her anymore. Worse, it began moving toward her other traps. It started destroying them deliberately one by one. It was eliminating her advantages. The creature has adapted, Nara said. Her plan is failing. She should retreat to the equipment and use the plasma rifle. But Jiho did not retreat. Instead, she did something that made all the examiners lean forward in shock. She stepped out from behind cover. She walked into the open, directly into the Thornback's view. She spread her arms wide and stood there, completely exposed. The Thornback saw her. It recognized easy prey. It charged. Jiho stood completely still until the creature was only a few meters away. Then at the last possible moment, she moved. Not running, but a quick step to the side. The Thornback's charge took it past her and it had to skid and turn to face her again. What is she doing? Nara demanded. She will be killed. But Keth understood. She is learning its attack pattern. She is using herself to gather data. Above them all, Ambassador Soman whispered a prayer, because she knew what Jiho was doing. She was doing what humans had always done when facing impossible odds. She was adapting. She was learning. She was refusing to give up. And the real hunt was only just beginning. The Thornback charged again. Jiho waited, her body relaxed, her eyes focused. She watched the creature's shoulders, the way its weight shifted before it moved. She watched its eyes, seeing where it looked before it struck. Every detail mattered. At the last moment, she moved again. A simple step, perfectly timed. The creature's massive claws whistled past her, missing by centimeters. The Thornback slid in the dirt, confused by how such slow prey kept escaping. In the observation room, Security Chief Nara stood up from her seat. This is madness. She cannot keep doing this. One mistake and she will be torn apart. But she is not making mistakes, Observer Keth said quietly. Watch closely. She is teaching it something. Jiho let the Thornback charge her 7 times. 7 times she dodged at the last possible moment. Each time she observed more. She learned the creature's tells, its patterns, its preferences. But more than that, she was sending a message to the creature itself. After the 7th charge, the Thornback stopped. It did not attack again immediately. Instead, it circled her slowly, breathing heavily. Its yellow eyes were different now. It was not looking at her like prey anymore. It was looking at her like something dangerous. Proctor Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly. Impossible. She has changed how the creature perceives her. It now sees her as a threat, not food. Predators avoid risky prey, Keth explained. If the cost is too high, they seek easier targets. She has made herself too expensive to hunt. Jiho began to move slowly and deliberately. She was not running away. She was walking toward a specific part of the forest. The Thornback followed, but it kept its distance now. It was wary, cautious. The relationship between them had changed. She led the creature toward a narrow ravine she had scouted earlier. The rock walls were close together, and the ground was uneven. For a creature as large as the Thornback, this terrain would be difficult. For a human, it was manageable. Jiho entered the ravine. The Thornback hesitated at the entrance. It did not want to follow her into a tight space, but it also did not want to let her escape. After a moment, it followed, moving more slowly than before. Inside the ravine, Jiho moved quickly through spaces the creature could not easily fit through. She climbed over rocks that were too high for the Thornback's bulk. She squeezed through gaps where it could not follow. Each time she appeared just ahead of it, just out of reach, driving it to frustration. She is using the environment as her weapon, Velthar observed. In open space, the creature has every advantage. Here, size becomes a weakness. Hours passed. The screens in the observation room showed that Jiho's heart rate was elevated but steady. She was tired, but she was managing her energy carefully. She took small rests when she could, always staying just ahead of the creature. She drank water from the stream. She breathed slowly and deeply. The Thornback, meanwhile, was showing signs of exhaustion. Its movements were slower. Its breathing was heavier. The simulation was designed to be realistic, and even a powerful predator had limits. Ambassador Soman watched in amazement. She was seeing something that the galaxy had never witnessed before. Persistence hunting. The ancient human strategy of simply outlasting prey. Early humans on Earth had hunted this way, running after animals for hours and hours until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Humans were not the fastest runners. They were not the strongest. But they had something special. They could keep going. They could sweat to cool down and maintain their pace while other animals overheated. They could track and follow for days if necessary. They were endurance predators. I understand now, Keth said softly. This is the human evolutionary advantage. Not strength. Not speed. Persistence. 4 hours into the simulation, the Thornback was clearly exhausted. It still followed Jiho, but without the earlier aggression. It was moving mechanically now, driven by instinct and programming, but its energy was nearly gone. Jiho led it to the place she had chosen from the beginning, a collapsed cave partially buried in the hillside. The entrance was wide, but inside, the space narrowed. Jiho had scouted this location during her initial exploration. She had seen its potential immediately. She entered the cave, her movements quick and confident. The Thornback, frustrated and tired, followed her inside. This was its mistake. Inside the cave, Jiho moved toward the back wall. There was a narrow crack just wide enough for a human to squeeze through. She had found it hours ago. She slipped through the crack easily and emerged outside the cave behind and above it. The thornback tried to follow, but it was too large. It could not fit through the crack. It was trapped inside the cave, unable to escape the way it came in because Jiho was already there, blocking its path. Before the creature could react, Jiho began her final task. She had prepared materials earlier and hidden them near the cave entrance. Large rocks, heavy branches, and the strong plant ropes she had woven. Working quickly, she began to seal the entrance. The thornback roared inside the cave. It charged at the entrance, but Jiho was already placing the largest rocks. Each time the creature pushed, she braced the barrier with more stones, more branches. She used the ropes to tie everything together, creating a wall that grew stronger with each attempt the thornback made to break through. The creature's roars echoed through the forest. It slammed against the barrier again and again, but it was exhausted, and the barrier was strong. With each failed attempt, the thornback's efforts grew weaker. Finally, Jiho placed the last rock. The entrance was sealed. The thornback alpha was trapped inside, alive but completely neutralized. It could not escape. It could not threaten anyone. The mission was complete. Jiho stepped back from the cave and sat down on a rock. She was breathing heavily, covered in dirt and sweat. Her hands were scratched from the rocks and rope. She was exhausted, but she was unharmed. The simulation registered the thornback as contained. The threat had been neutralized. The parameters of the test were met. In the observation room, complete silence fell. The examiners stared at their screens, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. A human, using no advanced technology, no weapons, nothing but intelligence and endurance, had captured one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators alive. Security Chief Nara's red scales had turned pale. She did it. She actually did it. Velthar's translator was silent. He had no words. In 47 cycles, he had never seen anything like this. Observer Keth pulsed with bright, complex patterns of light. If a crystal being could feel excitement, this was it. We asked for neutralization. We expected death. She gave us capture. She gave us something we could not even imagine. Ambassador Soman had tears running down her face. She did not know if they were from relief, pride, or fear of what would come next. Jiho had passed the test technically, but the implications of how she passed would echo through the galaxy. The simulation ended. The forest disappeared, and Jiho found herself back in the white examination chamber. She stood up slowly, her muscles sore, and faced the panel of examiners. They were all staring at her. Not with contempt or dismissal anymore. Now they looked at her with something else. Respect, confusion, and perhaps just a little bit of fear, because they had just learned something important about humans. They were not just another species. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before. They were persistence incarnate. They were adaptation made flesh. They were the species that would look at the impossible and ask a simple question. Why not? Jiho stood in the examination chamber waiting. Her breathing was still heavy from the hours of work in the simulation. Dirt covered her clothes and hands. Small cuts marked her arms from the rocks and branches. But she stood straight, meeting the eyes of the examiners without fear. The examination board was in chaos. Security Chief Nara was arguing loudly with Observer Keth. Proctor Velthar sat very still, his mandibles clicking in rapid patterns. Other examiners from different species whispered among themselves in languages that the translators struggled to process. Finally, Velthar raised one of his limbs. The room fell silent. Candidate Jiho, he began. His translator made his voice sound strange, but she could hear something in it that was not there before. Uncertainty. You have completed the simulation. The Thornback Alpha has been neutralized. By the technical requirements, you have succeeded. He paused. However, your methods were highly irregular. Before we can make a final judgment, we must understand your reasoning. Explain yourself. Jiho nodded. You asked me to neutralize a threat. I did that. The creature is alive but contained. It cannot harm anyone. But why? Nara demanded. You had weapons. You had technology. You could have killed it quickly and cleanly. Instead, you risked your life using primitive methods. Why? Jiho thought about how to explain. She thought about her brother Tai Yang and all their conversations about alien species. She thought about what it meant to be human. Death is permanent, she said simply. Once something is dead, you cannot learn from it anymore. You cannot study it. You cannot understand it. A living creature teaches you everything. A dead one teaches you nothing. She continued. You said the Thornback Alpha is one of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. That makes it valuable. Why destroy something valuable when you can preserve it? Capture achieves the same goal as killing, but it keeps your options open. Velthar leaned forward. And the risk? You used yourself as bait. You dodged its attacks by centimeters. One mistake would have meant serious injury. Yes, Jiho agreed. But I calculated that risk. I observed the creature carefully. I learned its patterns. The risk was high at first, but with each charge I understood it better. The risk decreased with knowledge. Observer Keth's crystal form pulsed. You also changed the creature's perception of you. You made it see you as a threat rather than prey. How did you know this would work? Jiho smiled slightly. On Earth, we have studied predators for thousands of years. Most predators are not mindless killers. They make calculations. They assess risk versus reward. If prey is too difficult, too dangerous, too costly to hunt, predators will usually avoid it. I simply made myself too expensive to kill, she added. Also, I learned from your own information. You said the Thornback has intelligence. Intelligence means it can learn, which means it can be influenced. I used that. The examiners exchanged glances. Jiho had not just completed the test. She had analyzed it, found its underlying principles, and used those principles to achieve her goal in an unexpected way. Nara spoke again, and this time her voice was different, quieter. You also did something else. Something we did not expect. You showed mercy. Jiho looked at her. Is mercy wrong? Not wrong, Nara said slowly. Just unprecedented. In all the cycles of this examination, every candidate has chosen to kill, even when they did not need to. Even when other options existed. They chose death because it was easier, because it was certain, because it was what we expected. She paused. You chose the harder path, the uncertain path, the path that required more thought, more effort, more risk. Why? Jiho considered the question carefully. Because I could. Because the choice existed. You asked if I wanted it alive, and I realized that I did. Not just for practical reasons, but because preserving life, even dangerous life, is better than destroying it, when you have a choice. The room fell silent again. This was the heart of it. Jiho had not just demonstrated human capability. She had demonstrated human values. She had shown that humans, when given the choice between destruction and preservation, might choose preservation even when it was harder. Velthar spoke, his voice thoughtful. You have exposed something important. For 47 cycles, we have been testing for one kind of strength. The strength to kill efficiently, the strength to eliminate threats decisively. We believed this was the mark of a civilized species. He gestured to the screen that still showed the sealed cave. But perhaps there is another kind of strength. The strength to choose mercy when violence is easier. The strength to preserve when destruction is simpler. The strength to see possibilities that others cannot imagine. Observer Keth pulsed brightly. The human has taught us something. She has shown us that our test was incomplete. We were not testing for all forms of intelligence. We were not measuring all types of capability. But Nara still looked troubled. Proctor Velthar, we must consider what this means. This human demonstrated abilities we did not know her species possessed. Persistence hunting, environmental manipulation, psychological warfare against a superior predator. If this is standard for humans, she did not finish, but everyone understood. The fear was clear. Humans were not just another species. They were something different. Something that could look at any situation and find solutions that others never considered. Something that could turn disadvantages into advantages. Something that could choose mercy but also had the capability to be terrifyingly effective. Above the examination hall, Ambassador Soman watched all of this. She understood what was happening. The galaxy was seeing humans for the first time, really seeing them, and they did not know whether to be impressed or afraid. Velthar stood up. The examination board must deliberate. Candidate Jiho, you will wait here. The examiners left the chamber, moving to a private room. Jiho was alone now, standing in the white space. She sat down on the floor, suddenly feeling how tired she was. Her muscles ached. Her hands hurt. But she had done it. She had shown them what humans could do. In the deliberation room, the debate was intense. Some examiners argued that Jiho had met every requirement of the test. She had neutralized the threat within the time limit. The method should not matter. Others argued that her methods were too alien, too unpredictable. How could the galaxy trust a species that thought so differently from everyone else? Keth offered a different perspective. Perhaps that is exactly why we should accept them. The galaxy has become stagnant. We all think the same way. We all approach problems with the same solutions. Humans think differently. They see what we cannot see. This could be valuable. Nara, who had been most opposed, spoke quietly. I feared the humans' capability, but now I think I understand. Yes, they are dangerous. Yes, they are unpredictable. But they are dangerous to threats, not to friends. They are unpredictable in finding solutions, not in betrayal. They chose mercy when they could have chosen violence. She looked at Velthar. That is the species I want in the galaxy. Not the ones who kill because it is easy. The ones who preserve because it is right. Velthar was quiet for a long time. Then he made his decision. A decision that would change everything. Jiho waited in the white examination chamber. Time passed slowly. She did not know how long the examiners would deliberate. She closed her eyes and thought about Earth. She thought about her brother Taiyang, who had helped her prepare. She wondered if she had made the right choice. Finally, the door opened. The examiners filed back into the room. Proctor Velthar walked to the front. His body language was different now. Less rigid. Less certain. Candidate Jiho, he began. Please stand. She stood, her heart beating faster. This was the moment. Everything depended on what came next. Velthar's many eyes looked at her. In 47 cycles of administering the Hunter simulation, we have witnessed many approaches. We have seen efficiency. We have seen brutality. We have seen elegance. We have seen courage. He paused. Never have we seen mercy. Above, in the observation gallery, Ambassador Soman held her breath. You have demonstrated strategic thinking beyond our evaluation parameters, Velthar continued. You have shown environmental adaptability that we did not anticipate. You have displayed psychological understanding that surprised us. More importantly, you have challenged our fundamental assumptions about what it means to neutralize a threat. He moved closer to her. Your success is undeniable. Your methods are unsettling. But effectiveness cannot be dismissed simply because it makes us uncomfortable. Velthar's next words echoed through the chamber. You pass. Welcome to the Galactic Academy, Candidate Jiho. Relief flooded through Jiho. She had done it. Humanity had passed the test. But Velthar was not finished speaking. However, he said, you have done more than pass an examination. You have taught us something important. You have shown us that our test was incomplete. He turned to address the other examiners. Effective immediately, the Hunter simulation will be redesigned. Future candidates will be asked explicitly, do you want it alive? They will be evaluated on their answer and their ability to execute it. We will test not just for the ability to kill, but for the wisdom to choose when killing is necessary and when other options exist. Observer Keth pulsed with bright light. What this human has taught us is profound. We have been selecting for warriors when we should have been selecting for thinkers, for problem solvers, for those who see beyond the immediate solution to the optimal one. Security Chief Nara stepped forward. I initially opposed the humans' methods. I feared what they represented. But I was wrong to fear capability. Capability without wisdom is dangerous, but capability with mercy, with thought, with the willingness to choose the harder right over the easier wrong, that is what we need in the galaxy. She looked at Jiho. Thank you for showing us this. Jiho bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect. I only answered your question honestly. You asked me to neutralize a threat. I showed you that neutralization does not require destruction. Later, after the official proceedings ended, Ambassador Soman found Jiho in a quiet corridor. The older woman's eyes were bright with tears. She embraced Jiho tightly. Do you understand what you have done? Soman asked. You did not just pass their test. You changed it. You changed them. You changed how the entire galaxy will approach this examination from now on. Jiho smiled tiredly. I just did what felt right. They gave me a choice, so I made one. That is the human way, Soman said. We always choose, even when others do not see that a choice exists. Back on Earth, Taiyang received the transmission about his sister's success. He read the full report, including the detailed analysis of her methods. He smiled, proud but not surprised. He had known Jiho would find a way. She had not just demonstrated human capability. She had demonstrated human character, the willingness to question, the refusal to accept that there is only one way, the choice to preserve rather than destroy. These were not just Jiho's qualities. These were human qualities. Weeks later, the Galactic Academy released its revised examination protocols. The Hunter simulation now included multiple success criteria: lethal neutralization, non-lethal capture, environmental manipulation, peaceful coexistence. Candidates had to demonstrate at least 2 different approaches. Other species began sending different types of candidates. Not just warriors anymore, scientists, diplomats, engineers, artists. The Academy was transforming from a military proving ground into a true center of learning and innovation, all because one human had asked a simple question. Months passed. Jiho continued her studies at the Academy. She learned about alien cultures, technologies, and philosophies. She made friends with beings from dozens of worlds. They watched her with respect and curiosity. They had heard about her examination. They knew what she had done. Sometimes new candidates would approach her and ask for advice. She always told them the same thing. Do not just accept the problem as it is presented. Look for possibilities. Look for choices. And when you find a choice, have the courage to take the harder path if it is the right one. One day, Jiho was invited to observe a new candidate taking the revised Hunter simulation. She watched from the observation gallery, standing beside Proctor Velthar. The candidate, a being from a species she did not recognize, successfully contained the Thornback Alpha, using a combination of technology and environmental manipulation. When it was over, the candidate asked Velthar, "What happens to it now?" "The creature I captured." Velthar's translator carried what might have been satisfaction. "It is studied. Its behavior is analyzed. Its needs are understood. And when we have learned all we can, it is returned to a safe habitat unharmed. This is the new protocol." He turned to Jiho. "This is the human legacy." A year after Jiho's examination, the Galactic Council met to discuss humanity's full membership in galactic society. The debate was thorough, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Earth's representative, Ambassador Somin, stood before the assembled species. A council member asked, "Your species has proven itself capable in unexpected ways. But tell us, Ambassador, what does humanity truly want from the galaxy?" Somin thought about Jiho standing before the examination board with that simple question. She thought about humanity's long history, with all its mistakes and triumphs. She thought about the endless human capacity for both destruction and creation. "We want what we have always wanted," she answered, "to understand, to learn, to find better ways, not just for ourselves but for everyone. We do not want to conquer the galaxy. We want to help it grow, and perhaps in the process grow ourselves." The vote was unanimous. Humanity joined the galactic community not as conquerors or supplicants, but as partners, as teachers, as students, as the species that had taught the galaxy to ask better questions. Somewhere in the Galactic Academy, in a training simulation that had been revised because of one human's question, another candidate faced a dangerous predator and paused. The candidate looked at the examiners and asked, "Do you want it alive?" And the galaxy smiled because it had learned something important. The best questions are the ones that change everything. The best choices are the ones that create new possibilities. The best species are the ones that never stop asking why not. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and the stars would never be quite the same again.